For many, today represents one of the worst days of the year. It is the official deadline today, because the 15th fell on a weekend, to file your taxes. This year, you, the American people, you have already forked over more money to the federal government than ever before in history. Now, even if you reside in a deep blue city, in a deep blue state, the vast majority of your tax dollars are being sent to the Washington sewer and swamp. The average American household is now forking over almost $37,000 a year to the feds. Wow. So what is the swamp doing for all of that hard-earned money you have? Well, under Joe Biden, it is not a pretty picture. Some would call it a dumpster fire. And today we have three major examples. Our grossly undermanaged, mismanaged government is just on the prowl every single day. Now, it starts at the very top. You have a president that is mentally checked out. I don't care if you want to say he is in cognitive decline or worse, that's up to you. But certainly the world sees it, you see it, every American sees it, China sees it, Russia sees it, Iran sees it, North Korea sees it. And guess what? According to his official schedule, yesterday he worked for less than an hour after spending a long weekend at the beach. But while Joe is doddering along, well, the woke attorneys and academics and bureaucrats that are in the White House, they're the ones running this country literally into the ground on every level. The incompetence is almost unbelievable. Wait till you hear the questions we have for you today. On Capitol Hill, that incompetence was glaring. It has never, ever been this bad. Take a look at this to start.
The policy of the prior administration to separate children from their parents was one of the most heinous policies in our recent memory, most certainly. Very proud of the work of the Family Reunification Task Force, which I am honored to lead. What we do is we enforce the law. But let me just say this.
But you're not.
It is stunning to me, stunning, to hear you say that the prior administration reunited children with their parents.
Oh, I see. So this is their fault?
When in fact,
you're not going to take any responsibility for the indentured servitude and exploitation of children that is happening on your watch. A moment ago, you were crowing about the fact that you treated children so well, and yet we find tens of thousands of children who are forced to work as slaves because of your policies, and you turn around and blame a prior administration. Mr. Secretary, this is par for the course for you. You do it every time you appear before this committee. You do it every time you appear before Congress. I, for one, am sick and tired of it, and thousands of children are in physical danger because of what you are doing.
Record illegal immigration, one year after another, 6 million plus to date, and more drugs, more fentanyl, more heroin, more meth, more cocaine have poured across our southern border under Joe Biden than ever before. More illegal immigrants have crossed into this country than ever before. More women and children have been trafficked sexually and otherwise and abused than ever before. Look at this report. Quote, the Biden administration ignored warning signs. They dodged blame for migrants forced into child labor. Now, why would we be shocked? Take a look at your screen. You might remember, remember those cages for kids at the height of the COVID pandemic? Those are Joe Biden's cages. Now, we all know that Biden's borders are Kamala Harris. She was never going to lift a finger. So it really was up to Secretary Mayorkas to fix this dire situation. But Mayorkas has utterly failed, and he tries to blame the Trump administration when we had very little illegal immigration. Why? Because Trump enforced the laws of the country. He did not enable law breaking like Mayorkas is doing, like Joe Biden is doing. He didn't reward the law breaking. You have a career lawyer and bureaucrat in Mayorkas. He has no idea what he's doing, and frankly, he should be embarrassed to even show his face in public. He has no business in this position. He's not keeping our country safe and secure. How many people have we already caught on the terror watch list? But even more importantly, how many people on that list have gotten through and come into our country to create terror cells right here in America? These people have no shame. And sadly, it's not just the border. It's not just Mayorkas. Here, get this. You're going to love this. Here's Biden's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms director making a complete idiot and fool of himself on Capitol Hill today, unable to describe what an assault rifle even is, because the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms director, he says, I'm no expert in firearms. Then why do you have this job?
In 15 seconds, would you define an assault weapon for me?
So
If you go past 15 seconds, I'll just interrupt you.
No, so I'll go shorter than that, because I honestly, I do think that's if Congress wishes to take that up, I think Congress would have to do the work, but we would be there to provide technical assistance. Unlike you, I'm not a firearms expert to the same extent as you may be, but we have people at ATF who can talk about velocity of firearms, what damage different kinds of firearms cause, so that whatever determination you chose to make would be an informed one.
We want to ban assault weapons, but we don't know what they are. You would think the guy trying to regulate and ban assault weapons, firearms, would have even basic knowledge about firearms. Another complete, incompetent, ignorant, idiot working for your government. This guy is, probably the worst of the worst. Expertise, clearly not a requirement in the Biden White House. Now, take a look, we're not done yet, at Biden's education secretary. This is all happening in one day. He was completely incapable and unable to answer a simple question. I don't think this is a hard question. I never thought, I would hear this in Congress. But take a look. What is a woman? That's the question.
Can you please define for me, what is a woman?
Our focus at the department is to provide equal access to students, including students who are LGBTQ, access free from discrimination.
Okay, so what's the definition of a woman? You haven't given me that. You haven't answered my question.
I think that's almost secondary to the important role that I have as Secretary of Education.
My question is not secondary. My question is very simple. What does HHS say the definition of a woman is?
I lead the Department of Education, and my job is to make sure that all students have access to public education, which includes co-curricular activities.
Let's pause for a second, shall we? Did you ever think this would be a real news story in the United States of America? Do you ever think that? Ideology always taking precedent in the Biden administration. Woke wins the day every day. Now, here's another example. You thought I was done. I'm not done yet. Secretary of State winking Tony Blinken in Japan today. A few miles away, North Korea has been launching ICBMs right near Japan for month after month after month. China's been conducting hostile military drills in the Pacific, the South China Sea, the Taiwan Straits, and threatening to invade our U.S. ally, Taiwan. And yet Tony Winkin Blinken was more focused on Japan's green energy. Take a look.
This is a tremendously exciting day. To have one of the most major embassies that we have anywhere in the world make this green transition really sets the example and sets the stage to do even more across the entire State Department enterprise. And as the ambassador said, we're fulfilling an executive order by the president, but the fact that it's happening here in Japan with Mission Tokyo is very, very meaningful.
That guy a couple of weeks ago admitted they did abandon our fellow Americans in Afghanistan, 175 that he knows of, and that some of them are being held hostage. They are all completely out of their realm. They have no business being in charge of anything within our government. Is anybody out there, any of you out watching tonight, are you missing the guy that sent out mean tweets, especially taking on China, that's trying to take over the USA as the world's sole superpower? Anybody paying attention to that? I guess Joe is probably visiting more castles this week. It's clear that most of the officials have never held down a real job outside of D.C. in their entire lives. Common sense be gone. Nobody has any common sense in that swamp. And America's geopolitical foes, they are more hostile than ever. They're taking full advantage. Americans are being held hostage. Let's see, in Russia, in Afghanistan, Mexico, elsewhere. All over the world, global supply chains are still a disaster. The drug crisis, worse than ever because of open borders. Inflation, record levels. Interest on our national debt is costing you, the American taxpayer, $400 billion, or around 10% of our entire federal budget. Even small things like processing times if you want a passport or a federal document request or an application or a permit or a visa, that's taking longer than ever before. And somewhere tonight, as Biden is fast asleep, can't stay up and watch our show, Kamala's cackling away and, laughing and giggling as she always does, and Mayorkas raging and blaming Trump for, the dog biting and the bee stinging. There's a little girl or boy being trafficked at the exact same time, being abused at our southern border by Mexican cartels. No one in the White House seems to give a damn. That should tell you everything you need to know about the people that are in charge. They're letting this happen. All of this is preventable.